Hi, I'm Christy Rost. It's Christmas at Swan's Nest, and it's snowing. Our 1898 historic home is ready for the holidays. I'll be baking cookies and showstopper desserts, planning a special Christmas brunch, and hosting an unforgettable gathering in the cabin. It's the essence of holiday enchantment. So please join me at home with Christy Rost. Christmas. Home for the holidays. Those words always make me smile. When family returns home for Christmas or guests come to visit, make-ahead breakfast recipes can be a great time saver. Holiday breakfast casserole is a scrumptious dish that's easy, flavorful, and it's ready to bake in the morning or for brunch. I have a half pound of bulk Italian sausage in my skillet, and I'm just browning this until there's no more pink through. Then I'm going to transfer this to a bowl and just set it aside for a few minutes. In the meantime, I have 1.5 pounds of Yukon Gold potatoes. I am going to saute these in this pan. I think I'll add just about a tablespoon of olive oil. Just saute them a little. These are going to go in the bottom of the casserole. Now, some people like to use bread and make it a little more of a custardy kind of casserole, but I really like having potatoes in the bottom because I like that texture, I like that extra nutrition that you get, and it just completely changes the complexion of this dish. So I'm going to saute these, and eventually I'll add in some onion, but not for about another 10 minutes or so, because the onion might burn before the potatoes are ready. So in the meantime, I have a bowl here with 12 eggs. So I got a whole dozen of large eggs in here, and this is going to be part of the filling. So I just whisk them gently, like this. And I have plenty of time to do this because these potatoes are going to take about 15 minutes, and I want them just kind of knife tender. So whisk up the eggs. Then I add in about 1/4 teaspoon of Himalayan sea salt. This is pink, it's so pretty. And I'll put in just a pinch. It's going to be about 1/8 teaspoon of white pepper. And white pepper has a little bit of a kick in the back of the throat. And that's the reason I like to use it in a big casserole like this, because it adds that extra layer of flavor that sometimes people can't even quite tell what it is, but they know that it's got just a little bit of a zing in their throat. And that's kind of that unexpected element for the casserole. So these are nicely whipped up. I'm adding in some onion. This is sweet onion. And I'm going to just stir that real briefly and let it start to soften. They'll only take a very couple minutes. It's going to add great flavor to this casserole. And then while the onion begins to soften, I'm going to add in a 1/2 cup of half and half to the egg mixture. I always like to keep it nice and cold in the fridge before I use it. And so that's why I waited to add it to the eggs while the potatoes were softening up. Okay, then also in preparation for the casserole, I like to have a layer of fresh baby spinach in there. So I have already taken most of the stems off, but it doesn't really matter if you leave some on. I'm going to give this a rough chop. I don't want them too small, but I also don't want big old pieces of spinach in anyone's mouth. So we'll just give this kind of a nice rough chop, and see, everything is kind of coming all together. That's what makes this casserole dish so fantastic, because I'm putting this together the night before I'm going to cook it. So whether it's Christmas morning or you're having just a holiday group of guests come in, maybe for brunch, or you're simply having a house full of people and you need a great breakfast, then this casserole is ideal because you can do it all the day ahead. Put it in the fridge overnight covered, and then it's ready to pop in the oven when you are. So I've got all my spinach ready. I have my egg base ready. The onion has softened. Now I'll add in just a little bit of garlic, a couple of cloves, large cloves of garlic. And I like to mince mine. I always like it kind of small. And this only needs just a brief stir, just until it gets nice and fragrant. And then I have a gorgeous casserole dish here, and I've sprayed it with just a little bit of nonstick spray. There we go. So let's put this all together. So I have my potatoes, they go in first, with the onions and the garlic. The fragrance is already pretty amazing. And I haven't even baked it in the oven yet. Finish out this onion here and garlic. And just spread this out on the bottom. This is the basis for your casserole. Right there. Then on goes the sausage. Use my hands because I can make it a little more evenly distributed. I'm already looking forward to breakfast tomorrow. All right. Then next goes the spinach. And just distribute that evenly around as well. Now here's a little onion. We don't want to miss a single bit of that flavor. And then I have my egg base right here. It's like a custard. I just want to evenly, just kind of carefully pour that over like this. So now I'm going to grate some beautiful baby cheddar over this. This is Wisconsin cheese. And it grates so beautifully. And put on as much or as little as you like. Ooh, look at that piece. This piece could be for me. Yeah, I think so. I think it will be. And if it crumbles a little bit, just cut off the end. Use that for a grilled cheese sandwich. Look how beautiful. So pretty. You know, I have to say, I love when people come for Christmas. I love when our boys come home. I love when our little grandchildren are with us, our daughter-in-law. And I love when people just come to visit and they spend the night here at Swan's Nest. And it's snowy and it's beautiful and it just feels so Christmassy. This really is kind of the ultimate Christmas home. I think it was, I don't know if when Ben Rivette built it back in 1898, if he thought of it that way, but we sure do. So I'm just being extremely generous with my cheese here because why not? Okay, and then this casserole is ready. All I have to do is take a piece of foil, cover it, and put it in the refrigerator overnight. And then tomorrow it's ready to put in the oven. I'm gonna bake it at 350 to 375 degrees until it's all puffy and golden and ready. The family is hungry. The holiday breakfast casserole is hot and ready to serve. I love all the different layers. So pretty. Look how puffy, and the cheese has melted, just a little bit of golden. And there we go. Holiday breakfast, easy as can be. I've always loved to bake, and especially at Christmas. As soon as the Thanksgiving leftovers are done, I'm in the kitchen baking hundreds of cookies. Some are shipped to family members who wait for them all year long. Others are delivered to friends. And still others, I always have a basket of homemade cookies ready for the delivery drivers who come up our driveway on snowy roads to bring us our packages. So today I am going to show you one of my absolute favorites. These are Pizzelles. It's an Italian cookie that is very traditional at Christmas time. A little bit of anise flavor, but if you aren't an anise fan, you can just use vanilla and that'll work just fine. So there's a history behind this recipe, and while this starts to cream, I'll tell you about that. So I have a cup of unsalted butter in here and 1.5 cups of granulated sugar. So I'm just going to add it in, lower the speed just a little, Just going to add it in gradually. And what you want to do is create a really light and fluffy basis for the cookies. So I first became knowledgeable about Pizzelles because my husband's grandmother always made Pizzelles at Christmas time. I had never had them. I had never seen them. This is way back in early married life. But I was intrigued with them because they have beautiful designs on them. And I'm all about how things look. It has to taste fabulous, but it has to knock your socks off when it comes to what it looks like. So I asked her about them and she shared her recipe with me. And then one year for Christmas, my mother and father-in-law gave me a Pizelle iron for Christmas. Now, I still have that Pizelle iron, and that's what I'm going to use today. And so when I make these cookies, it always brings back those memories. And you know, that's an awful lot of what I think the holidays are for so many. It's family recipes, family memories, family traditions. And for me, this is one of my biggest traditions. A few years ago, my mother came to visit for Christmas, and she and I made Pizzelles together. That was really fun. She got to do the help with the mixing, and she got to dust everything with the confectioner's sugar, and it was just a really special mother and daughter time. And then she was so excited when we bagged them up into little cellophane sacks and tied them with ribbon. And every time the UPS driver came, or the FedEx driver, should say, "Oh, we had to get cookies because someone's delivering packages." So those are the kind of memories that for me are really important during the holidays. So now this is pretty well creamed, so I'm going to start adding the eggs. And it takes 6 eggs. This is going to be a really light batter. And you can add them one at a time, or I've got them in a bowl here and they'll come out as they wish. And so we're going to just cream in between each addition of the eggs. And I'll shut the mixer off and scrape it down again. So this is an important part to make sure that the eggs are well incorporated into the butter sugar mixture. There we go, and mix that up. And then we can add more eggs. I'm going to up the speed just a little, just to help get this a little more fluffy and light in texture before I add the rest of the eggs. So we'll add a couple more here, and that is the 6 eggs. Turn that up a bit. And while that's creaming, I'm going to mix 3.5 cups of flour and 3 tablespoons of baking powder. Now, I am baking at high altitude. We are at 9,300 feet here, so that's pretty high. If you are at lower altitude, then you can go ahead and add 4 teaspoons of the baking powder, and that will work real well for you. Up here, because of the change in altitude and the difference in pressure, you have to be a little bit more careful about how much leavening you put into your ingredients. And because this has a lot of eggs in it, the eggs act as a leavening agent anyway. So I'm going to turn this off, scrape this one more time. I know there's butter on the bottom. I can tell, yep, there it is. And I want to be sure to get that completely well mixed. And this is a good time for me to add the anise extract. So I'm going to put in 2.5 teaspoons of anise extract. And make sure you get pure anise extract. You know, the quality of the ingredients you put in is the quality of flavor that you get out. Always have to cap it well. At high altitude, this stuff evaporates in the blink of an eye. And turn this back on. So I'm just stirring these together, and I'm going to give this a couple minutes to come all together. So I transferred the butter and sugar mixture to a bowl so you could see what I'm doing. So I'm going to add in about half of this mixture, the flour and the baking powder. I didn't need any salt in this. You really don't need it. I'm just going to stir this. It's going to make a really soft dough. And I'm sitting on a stool because we're at home with Christy Rost, and when I make this kind of cookie where it's going to be kind of a slow, relaxing process, I always sit down on a stool to do it. And the Pizzelles is one of those cookies I tend to make in the evenings when the house is quiet and I have the Christmas tree all lit up and I get to listen to music or maybe watch a Christmas movie and just kind of slowly and methodically make these cookies, knowing that within a couple days they're going to be all packaged up and on their way in the mail. So add the rest of the flour mixture here, and I've preheated my Pizelle iron. This is the one that my in-laws gave me. I absolutely love it. If it ever breaks, I'll be just devastated. But here we are, 30 years later, and it's still working. So what I did is I put a little bit of oil, just canola oil or safflower oil, on the Pizelle irons just to make sure that the cookie doesn't stick, because this dough is very sticky. I'm going to move this back in because I need that. And you'll notice that I have a towel here and paper towels. And these are going to come in very critical as I make the cookies. So let's open the iron. And I'm going to warn you, the first ones very often get way too dark and they end up either being pitched or cook's treat. And you can see this thing's super hot right now. So take a very generous teaspoon of dough, and you see how soft it is, and put that on here, and then close the iron. Now this takes about a minute. The first ones, I can already smell, I think they're gonna be too brown. The first ones will probably cook rather quickly because this is so hot. But as I continue to make the cookies, that will the heat will even out and they'll be just golden every time. Now the thing about making Pizzelles or any cookie is you're not going for perfection. You're going for the fact that you made it and it's a gift from you to those who will love it. And there they are. Okay, so the first ones, you see, they're kind of dark. That's gonna be probably cook's treat. We put them on a couple layers of paper towel on top of a towel because there's a lot of moisture in these cookies. Whoopsie. So you need to have the paper towel to absorb that moisture. So now I'm gonna move over here because I'll need this too. So I'm letting that absorb. This is already starting to cool down just a little, which is good. That's just what I need. And if the next ones come out too dark, then I've got extra cook's treat. So you don't worry about that kind of thing because there's oodles of dough, oodles of cookies that we're going to make. So as I proceed in this, it'll probably take about a minute for them to cook. You know, those first took like 20 seconds. And then once they cool off and some of that moisture is absorbed, then I move it to another paper towel. This will continue to let the absorption of the moisture, but this is also where they get a garnish of confectioner's sugar, just like this. You don't want to do it too heavily because you want to be able to still see the pattern. Now, these I'll put out here just so you can see, but believe me, those are going to end up probably in the trash. Okay, here we go. See, the second ones, look at the difference. So I didn't want you to get discouraged and have the first time you try it, have them get too dark and you go, oh no, I've ruined it, I won't be able to do this. And just use a fork to pick them up. I wanted you to see that more often than not, those first ones are going to burn. So again, I add a generous teaspoon on each. And I try and get them centered, but sometimes they move around. That's okay. And then these, some of the moisture is in here, and you may need to change this paper towel, this first paper towel, a couple of times by the time you get through all this batter, because they can get pretty damp. And the idea is the cookie should be very crisp, but if it retains too much moisture, it's not going to be crisp. It'll just bend and just not be quite as desirable or enjoyable, though the flavor will be great. And speaking of flavor, the anise often takes about 24 hours to really develop the fullness of its flavor. So if you taste it when you first make them, they may taste great, but if you wait just a little bit longer, until the next day, if you can possibly hold out. Okay, now see, these are not quite as golden as I want, so you just carefully put the lid back down for another few seconds. But anyway, so if the flavor isn't quite what you were hoping, give it 24 hours. It's gonna be beautiful. And again, if you do not like the flavor of anise, use vanilla. That'll work fine. You could even use lemon extract. Alrighty, these are a little better. Pick them up. So this is the kind of cookie that I do in the evening. I think about my family. I think about the Christmas gifts that I probably haven't wrapped yet. I think about who's coming to visit. And I certainly do think about my delivery people because they know the word is out. When you come here to Christy Rost's house, you're gonna get cookies before you head back out. Every family has its holiday traditions. Pizzelles are one of mine. I hope you enjoy them too. This is the bûche de Noël. It's a traditional holiday cake in France, and I'm making a Dutch mocha cake. And so I have 2/3 cup of milk and 2 tablespoons of butter that I put in a little saucepan here. I'm just gonna warm them up. I want the butter to melt. I want the milk to be hot, but not boiling. Now, while that is starting to heat, I have 3 eggs that I'm going to put in my mixer, and I'm going to beat these for several minutes until they become very light in color and real fluffy. I've been making the bûche de Noël for years. It's one of those cakes that's really not hard to make, but it really impresses people. It leaves a lasting impression. And we lived in France years ago. And so it's kind of, it's going back to that tradition of the bûche de Noël. Now, if you're in England, they're going to call it a Yule log cake. And you may have heard of a Yule log cake. And that's basically the same thing. So these are starting to get a little bit lighter in color, a little bit thicker, and now I'm going to start to add a little bit of sugar gradually. And a lot of times that's how you can tell that you're getting a really good thickness on your eggs is the color. The color will get lighter and lighter as you add the sugar in. But again, you only want to do a little at a time so that it has a chance to really get incorporated into the eggs. We'll do a little more, and I'll eventually stop this and scrape it down with my spatula after I get all the sugar in. And a little more. We're almost done with the sugar. I'm getting my bowl ready here. See, it's really thickening up now. There we are. That's the end of the sugar. So now I have flour and Dutch cocoa. And when I say Dutch cocoa, this actually is from Holland. And this is the brand that I use for that. It's called Rost, and it is from the Netherlands. And I like the flavor of it. If you can't find that or it's not in your stores, you can use a special dark cocoa. And actually what I would do is use a standard cocoa and a special dark and combine them. And you'll have pretty much the close approximation of the Dutch that you need. Now I add a little baking powder, a little bit of salt. This is instant espresso powder. This is what's going to translate this into a mocha cake. And I'm going to hold my vanilla. So, in the meantime, I'm keeping an eye on the milk and butter. It's almost melted. I'll just scrape this down to make sure I get all that sugar incorporated in here. There we go. Beautiful. I don't know if you can see this, but it's very, very pale, a little bubbly on top, and is much, much thicker. So now I just mix my dry ingredients together really, really well. You can use a whisk for this, but I love using a spoon. All right. Then I can remove this. Let's put this back here. And I'm going to whisk this in, or actually I stir it in. So here's my dry ingredients. There we go. I'm gonna kind of fold this so I want to keep it really light. And I don't want to deflate all those beautiful eggs. So just do a nice gentle fold until you get everything mixed really nicely. And so I'm doing my best to just mix this well without deflating it. So if you take your spatula and go in the middle and come out the top on the side, in the middle and out the top, right there to the side, that's how you can get all of the ingredients mixed really well without deflating it. This is, you may recognize it as a hot milk cake. And hot milk cakes are actually a very old-fashioned kind of cake. And they always start with eggs that are beaten really, really well. And then you fold in your dry ingredients after you have your sugar in there and all. And then at the end, you add in the hot milk mixture. So I've got that set to go. And this is when I'm going to switch over to my whisk. And I think I'll just add my vanilla in right there. Give that a quick mix. So now I switch to the whisk, and I add this a little at a time. And then gently, gently stir that in. In the meantime, I've preheated my oven to 350 degrees. So again, I don't want to deflate those beautiful eggs. And now with the flour in there, this is still a nice thick batter. Add a little more milk. Whisk this in gently. Thinning out the batter, now it's a little easier to mix. And I can add the rest, and my oven is ready. Just finish this off like this. I'm making sure I get everything off the bottom. And now I have a jelly roll pan, also called a quarter sheet baking pan. And I sprayed the bottom. I put parchment paper on top. I sprayed the parchment paper. Now I'm just going to pour this on. This will go in the oven and bake for about 14 to 17 minutes. And it's very, very thin. And the reason it's thin is because this is going to be a roulade. This cake is going to be rolled up and then filled with a beautiful buttercream frosting. Use your spatula to make sure that you get all the corners. And you'll be able to tell when the cake is done because it's not going to rise real high, but the edges will start to pull away from the pan. And that's how you can tell. Just about ready. Okay. And as always, you can give it a little gentle tap on the bottom as you take it to the oven, just to make sure you've got everything well distributed. This is ready for the oven. 14 to 17 minutes, we'll have cake. The Dutch mocha cake has now baked and it is still warm from the oven. And you want it to be warm or it will not roll for you. So I'm very lightly dusting a towel with confectioner's sugar. If you put too much confectioner's sugar on the towel, when you unroll the cake and go to frost the outside, the frosting won't stick. It just won't. So be very cautious how much you put on. It's just enough that the cake's not going to stick. So cake is still warm, but it's not hot. So I can pick up the pan, okay? And you just want to flip this over like that. And because of the parchment paper, it just comes right out. Then I take my towel and just start to roll it up and then roll it right onto the cake. And in the beginning, the edges are a little bit stiff, so you might have to work it a little bit and then roll. Now the cake will need to cool completely before you can frost it. So here's a tip. If you have plenty of time, you can set it aside and let it cool completely and then frost it. If you don't have a lot of time that day, or you just want to work ahead, you can do like I did one time. And I simply did this one night, wrapped it in plastic wrap to keep it nice and fresh. And then I unrolled it the next day and frosted. It was a breeze. So we're going to set this aside. Let's make the frosting. So this is a chocolate mocha buttercream. I have 1/4 cup of butter, unsalted butter, and I'm adding a 1/2 cup of semi-sweet chocolate. If you prefer, you can use 3 squares of semi-sweet chocolate. So whatever you have in the house. I always believe don't run to the grocery store if you can make it work. So I'm going to put this on for about 2.5 minutes to see how long this is, we'll check it and see how it goes. About a minute, 2 minutes and 30. I'm going to put it on 50% power and start. And I'll come to it and check it part way. And then I want to stir. The butter's going to melt first. The chocolate will get a little bit soft. You want to stir and let the butter continue melting the chocolate. So while I'm waiting for that, I'm going to take another 1/4 cup of butter, unsalted butter here, and I'm going to mix it with some confectioner's sugar. So I'll use about 1 cup of confectioner's sugar and start it real slowly. And let that just start to mix up. And then you can begin to add a little bit of milk to it. This recipe will take 4 to 5 tablespoons of milk. If you're using a hand mixer, you may find that you need a little more milk than if you're using a stand mixer, and that's pretty typical. So I'm going to add about a tablespoon of milk just to get this going. Now I can speed it up a bit. And then I'll add a little more powdered sugar to this. So about another cup. In the meantime, I then will pop over and see how the microwave is doing, what the chocolate looks like. So we'll let that mix while I do that. So I'm gonna run over here. Let's see what's happening here. Okay, so the butter is melting, the chocolate is softening, which is good. I'm going to give that another 30 seconds, I think. We'll start that back up. See what's happening over here. I can use a little more milk here at this point. So I'm going to put in about another tablespoon. I'm going to also add in some espresso powder. This is going to be that mocha. Mocha means a blend of chocolate and coffee, and that creates the flavor profile for mocha. I'm also going to add in a teaspoon of vanilla. It's about right. Can always add a little more vanilla if needed. Beautiful. So you can see, again, the butter is all melted, the chocolate's gotten soft, and now I just stir to make it smooth. And if you find that it's not quite smooth enough, then you put it back in the microwave for another 30 seconds or whatever at 50% power. You always want to use 50% power when you're working with your chocolate. If it's too hot, it'll seize. See, this is starting to smooth out now. And it's real important to have it smooth. And again, if it is being stubborn and doesn't want to melt all the way, then just stick it back in the microwave. And I've still got a few little morsels here. I'm just going to mush them with my spoon. The beauty of this recipe is being able to make the cake one day, make the frosting the next, and then assemble it all. This is nice. This will be good. I'm going to shut this off and pour this chocolate mixture in here. Beautiful. Get out every last little bit. Yum. Then turn the mixer back on. Mix this really well. I'm using about medium speed for that. And I can see bits of butter in the bottom. So I'm going to pull that off to make sure that this is going to be very smooth. This frosting is very, very light and creamy, almost like whipped cream. It's amazing. That's better. Now I'm going to start adding in the rest of my confectioner's sugar. And I have about 4 cups total. And add that alternately with your milk. And again, you'll need about 4 to 5 tablespoons of milk. So this will be 3 there. I'm going to add in just a tiny bit of Himalayan pink sea salt. The salt helps cut the extra sweetness of the sugar. I can add more powdered sugar here. And if it starts to look like it's getting real dry and thick, it's time to add more of the milk. So that's 4 tablespoons so far. I'm going to add in the remaining confectioner's sugar. And depending on the dryness of the air on the particular day that you are baking, just like with flour, you may need to add just a little extra moisture. This is coming together beautifully, but I want it super, super creamy. So I'm going to go ahead and add that last bit of milk. And I'll add most of the 5th and see what it looks like. And then I really let it whip. And when you let it whip, it gets all the air in there, which is going to make it super, super light. And it will also change the color a little bit. It's going to be a little lighter in color. And since this frosting will also become the outer part of the cake and the bark on the tree, because it is a Yule log, you'll want that bark to be just a little lighter. Oh, this is glorious. Now that the cake has cooled completely in the towel, I'm going to unroll it. And if it sticks a little bit, don't worry about it. You'll repair that when you're doing the buttercream frosting. Move a little more towards myself. This is beautiful. So unwrap it all the way. There we go. And just the very little end came off, and that's fine because that's going to be on the inside. Okay. So I'll just kind of piece that together. And then I'm going to frost it just right on the towel. I'm not going to touch it, not try and move it. And take some of the buttercream frosting, like this, and put a nice layer in here. Now you can use an offset spatula, whatever you like. I happen to always love a really good table knife. It just works for me. You want to save enough of the frosting to coat the outside of the Yule log, the bûche de Noël. So be generous, but not overly generous on the inside. Get my edges here on the side. And it's kind of important here because this is where it's going to seal. And then roll the cake towards yourself like this. And if it sticks to the towel a little bit, then just pull the towel down with your fingers like this to help ease it off the towel. And this is why we dusted the towel with confectioner's sugar, is to help release the cake. And if you make your cake the one day and leave it overnight, wrap it in your plastic wrap, it should do just fine. Just be patient as you're doing your roll back up. See little bits of cake, that's fine. What I found works really well, if you happen to have a cookie sheet that has open edges, you can roll your cake right onto it, like this. And then when you put the cake on your platter, you want to have that seam on the bottom, like that. And then if the edges are dry or super uneven, then take a knife and cut those off before you transfer it. But in this case, this came out really, really well. The cake is so moist and beautiful, so I don't need to do that. So now I'm going to frost this cake. And I'm going to move it just a little to get a little more centered. You can always clean up the platter later, but I have found that it's easier to frost it on the platter and not have to transfer it once it's frosted. So just keep a damp towel handy for later when you need to clean up the edges. I'm going to turn this around so I can see what I'm doing here. Okay, as you can probably tell, I really love doing this stuff. You want to take the frosting down all the way on the edges. I'm going to turn it around again. You can see I brought it all the way down here. I turn it so I can see what I'm doing here. And this cake would be very pretty just like this. But we do want to make sure, since it is a bûche de Noël, which means a chocolate log, a Christmas log, that it looks like a log. So just get all of your frosting on here and then you do the edges, the fronts, the two ends. So just put this on the end like this. And you want to cover all the cake, but don't worry about it being perfect, because logs never are, and we're still going to create the bark. This cake holds well, so you don't have to do this the day you're serving it. It holds very well overnight. So if you really would like to do this, but you don't want to do it on the day you have guests coming, I would suggest you do it the day prior. That's what I always do. Now I'm going to do the other side so you can see that. And then when I do decorate this, when I garnish it at the very, very end, just before serving, I've made meringue mushrooms, because a lot of times mushrooms grow on tree logs. And that's kind of the grand finale there. Okay, so then take a fork and use your fork to create the bark. And just run it along like that. It should be very uneven and rough, so don't look for perfection. Like that. Turn it around so you can see. Just right there. Okay, and then the rings. You need to do the rings on the log. So I start at the bottom and just kind of go around like this. And then in the center to do the same. And one more. And why am I going to all this trouble and making a gorgeous bûche de Noël? Because we are going to have a fabulous Christmas party tonight, and my guests are going to absolutely love this. Now I'm going to make cinnamon and spice cookies. They smell so good and they taste even better. And this is 3 tablespoons of unsalted butter and a half cup of brown sugar. This is dark brown sugar. You can use light if you want, but at high altitude, we need the extra color and browning that comes from the darker brown sugar. So that's why you see me use it a lot. If you're at low altitude, it really isn't going to make that much difference. So I'm going to beat these until they get fairly light, but it's not going to be the same as light for many other cookies, okay? So it's still going to be kind of on the stiff side. You just want to mix this real well. So I'm going to stop the machine for just a moment and scrape this down to make sure that everything is getting well blended, and to make sure none of the butter is just stuck on the bottom. I'll turn that off. I have 2 cups of almond flour, and to this I'm going to add a teaspoon of Saigon cinnamon. some freshly grated nutmeg. I always use my microplane for this. Smells fabulous. Just a little bit of baking powder, about a 1/4 teaspoon, about an 1/8 teaspoon of baking soda, and a 1/4 teaspoon of the pink Himalayan sea salt. Just mix that together. And just, here we go. Take a big spoon and just stir this together. Now, if you haven't guessed already, this is a gluten-free cookie. And for those of you who eat gluten-free and feel a little left out at the holiday time, I got you covered. This cookie smells divine, tastes incredible, and I swear if you serve it, no one else will understand or guess that it could possibly be gluten-free. So I'm adding 2 teaspoons of vanilla and maybe just a smidge extra. There we go. I'm gonna mix this briefly and then add in the almond flour. So this is super simple, super easy to make, quick, so quick, just all goes together. And during the holidays, don't you just need a recipe like that? So I'm going to just mix this until it's thoroughly combined. The dough will be very sticky, so you aren't going to be able to make balls in your hand with it or anything like that. It's just too sticky for that. So instead, I have 2 spoons and I'll work with that. So let me open this up. We'll get rid of this. And I've greased a cookie sheet and preheated the oven to 350 degrees. Just clean up my station a little bit here. And then take your 2 spoons. These cookies spread a lot when they bake. So you just want to use little tiny teaspoons here. And I put 3 in a row because, like I said, they spread a lot. And because there's no flour, like wheat flour in here, that's why the dough is so sticky. You don't have that binding. And I shape them with my finger dipped in just a little bit of water. They don't have to be perfect. They will just spread out just fine, but you do want to flatten them a little bit. Kind of gives them a head start. So that's what we do. Quick, easy, simple. 350 degrees in the oven for about maybe 12 minutes, and they are ready to go. The cinnamon and spice cookies have just come out of the oven. I'm going to let them sit on the tray for 1 minute and then remove them onto a wire rack to cool completely. If you don't let them sit for the 1 minute, they'll scrunch up when you try and get them off the tray. If you let them stay too long on the cookie tray, you'll never get them off. So anyway, then put them on the wire rack, let them cool completely, and they're ready to serve as is. But since it's Christmas, I'm going to drizzle these with a little bit of confectioner's sugar frosting and some sprinkles so that no matter who sees these cookies, they're gonna say, oh, those are pretty. And whether it's gluten-free or not, it should be gorgeous. I learned a long time ago that my Southwest casserole soft tacos are a major hit with any crowd. So that's what I'm making for you today. I've browned 2 pounds of ground chuck, anywhere from 1 pound to 2, depending on the size of your crowd. And then I'm going to add in sweet onion, chopped, and I would cook this for a couple of minutes until it softens. Then add in 2 to 3 cloves, large cloves of garlic, nicely minced. This is what I call a dump and stir kind of recipe. You're going to love this. It really fills people up. It makes a lot. It's quick and easy. Quick and quick. Easy to make. So after you let that cook for just a little bit, stir in 1 8-ounce can of tomato sauce. This is also a weeknight kind of meal. So during the holidays, when you're busy, wow, what a great dinner solution. And it freezes well too, which is always nice. So now I have about 1.5 cups of salsa. So add that in. Then I stir in 2 cans of dark red kidney beans. Now, if you don't have a huge crowd, you don't need to make a whole lot. You can use 1 can, and that's what I'll do for a weeknight kind of meal. But if I'm doing a big casserole dish like I am for our Christmas party, I'm stretching the recipe by adding extra. So I'm just gonna stir this up. At this point, I can turn my heat real low. Now you can make this ahead and freeze it, and then just defrost and heat it in the oven. You can make it and serve it right from the casserole dish. Just heat it in the oven right before your party and you're ready to go. Or if it's a weeknight kind of meal and you're in a hurry, you can make this dish and serve it straight from the skillet. That's what I call a really versatile recipe and a great mealtime solution. So then I have some Carr Valley cranberry chipotle cheddar. This is from Wisconsin, and I love my friends at Carr Valley, and they sent me all these beautiful cheeses, and you're gonna see more of them in a little while. So I have this cranberry chipotle cheddar, which is so seasonal for Christmas time and all through the holidays in the winter. So I'm going to grate some right into the dish. And then I take some tortilla chips because this can be a little liquidy. So take some tortilla chips and just crush them up in your hands like this. And they'll help to thicken this dish. So use the bottom of the bag. I like to save that part. And stir this. Now if you're going to serve straight from the skillet, then go ahead and heat this through really well. If you're going to put it into the casserole dish, let the oven do the work for you. My guests are gonna love this tonight. So I serve this with warm floured tortillas, shredded lettuce, some additional grated cheese, and everybody just makes their own. So let's move everything to the side. I'll bring my casserole dish over here. Gorgeous, gorgeous. This Christmas red is so pretty. And I can put this right into this dish. Wow. My mouth is watering already. I still have an hour or two before the party. I'm going to have to wait, but oh wow, this is beautiful. And then I take Carr Valley baby cheddar and just sprinkle the top. Then I'll cover the casserole, put it in the oven, anywhere from 325 up to 375, depending on how quickly you need the dish, and just bake it until it is bubbly and hot and fragrant, and it's ready to go. One of the things I love to serve during a party any time of year is a cheese board. And my friends at Carr Valley Cheese made sure that I had a huge selection to choose from. So I have this wonderful large cutting board to start with, and I'm going to take this Carr Valley baby cheddar and put it right in the middle. And the baby cheddar always has this red wax. And then because my guests are going to want to know what is the various kinds of cheeses, I have a little card that I've made for that. This is the Carr Valley Bessie's Blend. This is a goat and cow milk cheese. And I'm just going to put that here. And you want to stagger where you put your cheeses. And so I'll put that right there. So this one is back a little farther. This one is a little closer to the front. This one is the Carr Valley Marissa. It's made from sheep's milk. And what's kind of special about Marissa is that's the name of the daughter of the owner, Sid, of Carr Valley Cheese. And then I have this little tiny Glacier Point blue spruce blue cheese. And what's so neat about this is we have blue spruce right here at Swan's Nest. And this one, I'm just going to keep this little tag right there so people can tell what it is, but how appropriate to be surrounded by blue spruce trees and have a cheese that also has bits of blue spruce in it. Then for my friends at Melissa's, I have all kinds of beautiful dried fruits. And so I have apricots, and I'm going to put those right back here. I have hazelnuts. I'll put them right at the front. These are dried Rainier cherries, really, really tasty and yummy. I'm gonna stick those over here. And then I've got some dried pineapple, pretty color. And I'm gonna put those right in there. And I may adjust these a little bit once I get them out on the table. And then I have some pitted dates. These are from also my friends at Melissa's. And rather than put these in a bowl, I'm just going to kind of stagger them around so people can just pick up a date and pop it in their mouth. Because the party is in the cabin. There's nothing fancy about the location of this Christmas party. But the cabin was built in the 1890s and it is absolutely charming. So I look forward to hosting our guests in there. Christmas at Swan's Nest is always magical, but there are few things more enchanting than a party in the cabin. The food is ready, the wine is chilled, our guests will be here soon, and I look forward to welcoming you to this grand celebration at home with Christy Rost. Christmas.
Okay, what are these, Christy?
Oh, these are meringue mushrooms. They are so fun to make.
Isn't that?
They're incredible, yeah. So you just make the little caps, and then you make the little dollops, which are the stems, and then hollow out the center and stick one of the little stems in there, and you have the little buttercream frosting. This is a mocha buttercream.
Oh,
and it's neat
delicious.
because you know, mushrooms always have that little brown at the bottom, so it just kind of mimics that. You need one on your plate.
I do.
There you go. Let's have one. I have to say, my dear husband, Randy, has been so supportive as we did all that, all this great food. And we're really looking forward to celebrating Christmas with good friends like you and family coming and glorious snowy day, and how special this is. Thank you all for being here.
Our pleasure.
Thank you, dear friends, for being here to celebrate Christmas with us. We are so happy to have you here. Randy, thank you, my dear. I love you. Merry Christmas to you all. Merry Christmas.